Hey there, it's Megan Aller, sales executive with First American Title in Denver, Colorado. This is your weekly video update, and here I'm going to give you your projections for 2019 for those of you that are looking for strategic advantage on how to better advise your buyers and sellers about when to be in the market looking into 2019. Now, again, we're entering into now year 7 of our protracted sellers market, and looking back at the last 6 years of really excellent data, you can see that there's a really nice cyclical pattern to what happens in our marketplace. This graph behind me shows active in blue, yellow and under contract, red is closed, and then gray represents those expired listings. But you can see that we've had a really consistent flow in our marketplace going on for the last 6-7 years now. So looking forward into 2019, rather than putting together projections, what I'm going to give you is baseline. It's no doubt that there's going to be some slight shift in our marketplace going into 2019. It's just a matter of how much that's going to be. Now, with that said, I think that the peaks and the valleys that we're looking for in 2019 are going to be roughly the same as what we've experienced during the past few years. We're going to end up close to about the same place that we have in the past. This will be a slightly less extreme seller's market, and what I'm anticipating is more sensitivity for buyers as interest rates start to go up. As you know, our prices have continued to climb between 8 to 11% year over year for the last 6 years in a row. Once we start coupling that with anticipated increases in interest rate, again, those buyers will start being more sensitive to what happens as those prices and interest rates start to go up. Looking at our active inventory here for going into 2019, I expect that the first half of the year, the first 3 months actually, is going to be our lowest inventory of the year. We're probably looking somewhere between 4,000 and 4,500 units starting out 2019, and then we'll peak out by the time that we get into August and September as we have for the past few years. Now, the important thing to note about that is that if you have a listing that you want to bring to market, it's important that you maximize the largest pool of potential buyers. Looking here at the yellow graph now, this shows the number of units that we're anticipating to go under contract, and please note that that's shifted earlier in the year. The longer that we remain in this protracted seller's market, buyers are under the impression that they have to get to market earlier and earlier and earlier in order to beat other buyers to the market. And so with low inventory and buyers getting to market early means that prices go up in the first half of the year. The second half of the year, as we have more inventory in the market and buyer pool starts to recede, prices will retract back down. I think at the end of the year, we're probably looking at somewhere close to a 5 to 7% appreciation rate. Buyer activity is going to be at its peak between March, April, and May. In May, we're probably looking close to around 4,000 to 4,500 units going under contract at that point, with lower units going under contract at the beginning and at the end of the year. What that means for you sellers is that you need to be in the market early in 2019, trying to beat those interest rate hikes and match yourself with that buyer pool so that you can maximize the number of units, the number of buyers that are looking at your properties. Now, closed transactions, that's here in red, that ends up mirroring exactly what we see with those units going under contract, typically trailing behind by about 30 to 45 days. And so that means that by the time that we get into June, we'll have the bulk of those units that closed or went under contract in April and May now hitting the closing table. Okay. Looking at months supply of inventory, again, this is our ratio of buyers to sellers. When this number is highest in the annual cycle, that's the best opportunity to be a buyer. When it's at its lowest, that's the best opportunity to be a seller. That's when it favors you most. Okay. So looking at March, April, May, that's the most favorable time to be a seller based on this particular metric. And the most favorable time to be a buyer when you have negotiating power is looking at January. February starts to pick up a little bit, but then September, October, November, and December. Okay. Looking at month over month price projections, we expect all of the price appreciation just as we've seen for the last 6 years in a row. They're going to be set during the first half of the year. It looks like we're going to end up somewhere around that $545,000 to $555,000 price point by the time that we get into May and June. Okay, so again, we see all of our price appreciation established in the first half of the year. In the second half of the year, that really pulls back. Same thing happens for median prices. Those come in a little bit lower since we're measuring the middle of the pack at that point. By June, I'm anticipating somewhere around a $475,000 median sales price for the 7 metro Denver counties. Closed to list price ratios, the heat of the market really exists again. March, April, May, we continue to stack those up. Lowest days on market are looking between May, June, and July. Again, since that's a closed metric, those units are going under contract typically 30 to 45 days prior to that number. We could see homes moving as quickly as 7 days or less, again, as we go into those spring, summer months. Percentage of units that go under contract in 7 days or less, the majority of those happen March, April, May again, okay? Finally, here's that big long heat map that I've talked about last week, as also was in the Greater Metro Denver Market Review for the big report that was sent out earlier in the year, and I promised you a cheat sheet looking into 2019, okay? Now, looking into 2019, what I've done is I've color-coded this graph for you so that you can see that green represents the best opportunity for the seller, and the orange or the yellow represents the best opportunity for the buyer in the marketplace. Down the left-hand side of your screen, we have the target sold month, and then I back into it from contract to closing and then listing to contract date so that you have your target listing month. And if I draw a line right through where we see March, April, and May, those are the listings that have the best odds of selling or most favorable to be a seller. And then it's the bookends of our year, the early part of 2019 and the end of 2019, where the buyer will have the best opportunity looking into 2019. So again, we're looking forward to a really extreme seller's market again in 2019, but it will be less extreme than what we've seen in previous years. So there will be some softening, but it's not going to shift and change back to what we saw in the early 2000s that created the recession. So the most technical term that I've come up with for this one is that this is a slightly less good seller's market. Thanks so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to get a copy of the entire report, feel free to shoot me an email. All of my contact information is at the bottom of your screen, and I'd love to give you a copy of the listing cheat sheet for 2019. And so thanks so much. Hopefully I'll get to see you guys at our closing tables really soon.